Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, and perhaps even good evening. Thank you so much for joining me for another exciting Daz Pro Artist series in which my friend Chris and I are going to totally have a look at Substance Painter. This is one of those things that is important to understand about because Substance Painter gives you the option to literally have unlimited variety of existing content. And part of the problem of making that happen is understanding how these two things kind of, work together. But, we're going to work it all out. So without further ado, let me welcome my friend Chris. Here he is, live from New York. How you doing?
Hey, y'all.
Good to see you.
Hey, all you cool cats.
It's wonderful to have you back, Chris. It's the second time you're on the show. This is nice. I like the fact that I have a show. This is cool.
Yes, thanks for having me back, Jay.
Chris and I both got into Substance Painter kind of about a year ago, I believe. Is that right?
Actually, I got in earlier this year.
Earlier this year. Okay, so maybe you're a little behind me, but you have more knowledge than I have. So let's not forget that. You actually have done very productive stuff with Substance Painter, unlike me, who has been banging his head against the wall.
I think I just use it a little more regularly than you do.
I think so too. I think Substance Painter has kind of tripped me up when I first started with it because of its unique way of dealing with multiple material zones. That is kind of difficult to get your head around in Substance Painter. And I suppose other 3D applications don't work the way most Daz assets are set up. So maybe that's why we had difficulties, or why I had difficulties.
Right. Yeah, I'm seeing that. Yeah, that's one of the big things. If Substance would just recognize that materials could all be on one sheet and export that, it would be a lot easier to work with.
Right, indeed. Yes.
It doesn't, so we have some workarounds to that.
Thankfully, we have them now. And now finally, we have kind of worked out how to do it properly. Chris, tell us a little bit about what you're doing with Substance Painter in your workflow.
I generally do streams where I make stuff in Blender and Clo, and then it usually ends up in Daz Studio at some point or another. And I've just found that Substance Designer gives me that little extra speed and enhancement to my textures. I just dreaded doing textures, and then Substance Designer just makes it so much easier to just drag and drop and then add the little touches to the edges and the creases and things that really take things to kind of like the next level. And I've been a lot happier with that.
You've been making assets for a while, and before that, before you started using Substance Painter, how did you do textures then?
Basically, flood fills in Photoshop, stuff like that. They don't look as nice as what I'm getting out now. I'll admit to that. So,
but the thing is, I think this is how we all started: flood fills in Photoshop, and then kind of fake bump maps and height maps and roughness maps, and try to do your best on a 2D plane and import it into Daz Studio, do a quick preview render, and it's kind of ish there. But the problem is, I think we could get away with that principle much easier in 3D Light Times than we can now, where literally PBR materials are everywhere. So I suppose, I feel your pain, man. So I'm kind of glad that we have a tool like Substance Painter now. Swords for Two likes my shirt. That's awesome. Wonderful to see you all. We have a good turnout here. This is great. 40 viewers is very good. So I'm glad you're all here. So why don't we have a quick look at what Substance Painter can actually do for those of you who are not quite familiar with the program. Let me just go and switch over to something that I thought, nope, that's not it. Something that I thought I could share with you like this. That works, right? We can see that? Yes, we can. Haha. This is neat. Both Chris and I, and the Daz logo is right in my face. Well, okay, fine. That's, neither here nor there. That's not there on the Vimeo stream. Let's imagine that's not there. So this is Substance Painter, and we'll talk a little bit more about how Substance Painter fits into Adobe's overall Substance kind of strategy, if you will. But so this is an asset that I've brought in from Daz Studio, and it's a very simple one. It's just a kind of a treasure chest. It had originally two material zones, namely the wood here and the metal on the side. And so what Substance Painter can do is that it can drag and drop these materials here. So like this is a wood. If I go and click that and I wanted to have that something be different, I can just go make it an artificial leather and just click on it. And then, well, leather was obviously a terrible example, but you can see that the material changes. And the cool thing is that these are PBR materials. So if I look from the side, I can see that there is an actual height map or kind of a profile in here, and it looks very realistic.
Right. You got that roughness map there giving you the variation in the sheen.
Indeed. If I like here, aluminum insulator, that's another one that I might not technically use on a box like this, but it's really easy to just go and grab a material and just put it on there. And then once I have that, and I might just go back to the wood here so you can go and look for that. Maybe the wood American cherry. You can make all kinds of quick changes to it. So if this was a material zone in Daz Studio, I could go on to the materials somewhere here. That's not it, is it? Where do I do the UV things for the material? Is that under attributes? No, it's not, is it? I thought it was here somewhere. Here, maybe that's it. So I can change the tiling to something larger. I can change the rotation of the tiling, but it's on a per material, kind of on a per layer basis. And I can change the projection as well. So if I go and put this to maybe 2 here and put the rotation back to 0, and I'm thinking the wood grain is too, that it kind of doesn't look quite right, I can go and change the projection here from UV projection maybe to triplanar. Then the projection will look different. I can also go and move that around. So we'll learn a lot about what Substance Painter can bring to the party. Another thing I find absolutely cool about this is how you can make these edge wear things on the metal here. So if I go and switch that off, this was the actual, the brass material here, but that looks very squeaky clean and shiny. So if this was a battered old box, you can go and add these little dirt and edge wear effects on there, and then either change the effect, make that less worn or more worn, or you can go and add other things to it that make the materials just look very different for literally endless variation. So Substance Painter is one of the programs that Adobe have on offer. Chris, do you want to say a little bit more about that? How the other programs fit into this whole affair?
What is it? Let me bring up the Adobe site.
Yeah, let me go and switch over to your PC, in fact, which we can do now. It's awesome, thanks to my new Stream Deck.
Yeah, I mean, currently there's a few ways you can get Substance Painter. It is available still with perpetual licenses on Steam for the 2022 version, in which case you get upgrades until the end of the year, and then you're kind of stuck with those. But you know, like what we're used to with perpetual licenses, you own that forever.
Right, you keep that forever. This is a good point to remember. So as your Substance subscription on Adobe runs out, they will suspend access to the program for you, so you can't use it anymore. Whereas a perpetual license, even if it's 3 years out of date and it still works, you can still use it. So important to remember.
Exactly. And then there's the actual Adobe subscription plans, in which case you actually get access to their assets, which actually is kind of nice. So on the fly, if you're looking for a particular mud or a particular fabric or something, you can just download the asset, add it to your library, and then just use that on your projects instead of having to build your own. So that comes with what the Substance Painter, which we're playing with today.
Today, indeed.
Substance Sampler, which lets you take pictures and basically create assets out of that.
This is
PBR assets.
This is a really cool one. You've literally just looked at that in one of your streams. I watched that. That was very inspiring. Take a picture, crop out a piece, and turn it into a tileable PBR material. That's what Substance Sampler does. Very interesting.
Right. And there's other programs that do that, but Substance basically does that. And yeah, it's lets you split it out and make your normal map, your diffuse map, your roughness maps and all that kind of stuff, just basically from a photograph, making tweaks and things. And then you basically get your PBR material just out of a picture that way.
I'm excited to try that out. I haven't yet. I haven't really have opened it once and thought, ooh, that's interesting. Blew my mind, and then I moved on. So
Exactly. And then there's the Designer, which is the program that actually lets you build your own. But honestly, I haven't used the Designer, so I can't really speak much to that.
It's like
I haven't had the patience to sit down and go through the tutorials on that.
I think it does things like it gives you parameters to build the material. That's what you can design,
Right.
like the
So like what you were
aluminium
dealing
insulator.
with the rotating
exactly?
textures and things.
Indeed, and you can then in the parameters say the netting needs to look a little bit wider, and there needs to be different type of netting, and then it lets you kind of put all this parametric is the word I was looking for. It lets you build parametric materials.
Right. And then of course you get, you're allowed 30 assets a month, which I haven't been going through. I think I've got access to maybe 100 assets or so right now. And you get those every month and they accumulate. So people who've used Substance forever have like hundreds of assets. But then there's the other plan, which now I thought it used to be $40 a month, but now it's like $50 a month.
I swear it was, Chris. I swear it was. This is definitely last time I checked, it was 40, yes. Right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So with that, you get 50 assets a month. And you get Stager, which I honestly am not familiar with, but it seems to be kind of like Daz Studio, but maybe not as advanced. It allows you to like bring in all your components together, put them up in a scene, and I don't know if it includes animation or not, to tell you the truth.
I'd love to try and just have a look at it and see what it brings to the party, because when it came out, I was thinking I'm not entirely sure why anyone would want that, but that is of course only from our perspective, who are Daz Studio users or maybe Blender users.
So if you're not a Daz Studio user, maybe that applies to you, because our friend Dorell, she's a Clo user, Power Clo user, and she uses Stager. So
she does she?
Part of her workflow for her fashion. What do I want to say? The apparel industry stuff that she actually does.
I imagine it to be something like, so Painter lets you literally make an iRay render inside Substance Painter, but only really of the asset that you're texturing for preview purposes and showcase purposes. But maybe if you want to really showcase your item in situ, you might want to bring in a table and maybe a character, not just the dress. You might have a character wear that, and that is not possible with Painter or Substance Painter. So maybe that's where Stager comes in. Interesting.
Yeah, but us Daz Studio users, we basically got Daz Studio, so I'm not seeing the point to that for us.
Good point.
Those are the basic ways you get Substance currently.
Yeah, those are your options. And the assets, getting the assets with the subscription is funky because there are a lot of them. There's also free community assets, but the ones that you get credits for are the ones that Adobe prepare, and they look really handsome, I have to say.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Although it's weird. They have like weird gaps, like emissive objects, almost nothing. Camouflage fabrics, there's like hundreds of them. So it's
interesting.
I think it's that weird. If you can kind of imagine the people making Call of Duty, what assets they need. So that seems to be kind of the lean towards the asset collection. It seems something like that. So that's kind of an overview of where to get Substance and what you can get with it.
And in this session, we're going to focus on Substance Painter. And that's the one that you can use to drag and drop materials onto objects, 3D objects, and fine-tune them as well. Chris, you've made a picture the other day in which I think you built a Tommy gun from the 20s, 30s. Why don't you show us that? Exactly, that's the one.
I'm zoomed in. Let me back out a little bit here. So this was actually modeled in Blender on stream, and then we textured it in Substance Designer, and finally it ended up in Daz, where I'm making a set of this along with a carrying case.
Nice.
back in the days also worked for violins.
Primarily violins.
That's it. That's why you were allowed to carry your Tommy gun around, because everybody thought, oh, it's just a violin. Yeah, that's why Al Capone's got a violin case.
That's why he's not a violinist as such.
Exactly. So
Nico,
zoom in a little bit.
Sorry, Nico, you're absolutely right. It is not part of the Adobe Creative Cloud subscription. Substance is something that you pay in addition for. Good point.
Yeah,
that's a very good point.
Unfortunately, yeah. So I am not an overly sophisticated Substance user. Most of my use, generally, I set up a texture and I just do edge wear and dirt just to add that little extra. So you can kind of see how the edges look a little light and the crevices are a little darker. Just to give it that little extra punch instead of just doing it like a flood fill.
Nice. Works well enough. Very nice. Why don't you show us how we can import an asset from Daz Studio into Substance Painter, and we'll talk a little bit about the challenges of what is necessary to make that work, without a hitch, and then we're going to bring it back into Daz Studio. Don't worry about paying too much attention at this point. First of all, we're recording this session, of course, and we will be going through this process multiple times with varying degrees of complexity. So.
Right. And we decided that we were going to use a couple of pieces out of this bundle here, the Trendy Threads outfit bundle.
Trendy Threads bundle, indeed, yes. Very good. So, it's currently on sale because of the stream. So if you haven't got it, pick it up. It has a lot of relatively simplistic outfits on it that you can really zoosh up with Substance Painter.
There's a ton of stuff in here.
Yes,
I'm going to go with the shirt because it has some nice zones to it.
Oh, the blouse.
The blouse, yes, the blouse. Cool. That's right. And I'm going to just, I like to use Daz Central. I know a lot of people don't, but I do just because I love the graphical interface here. It really makes it easy for me to find things.
It's been a while since I've looked at Daz Central. Maybe I should give it another go. I've had kind of abandoned it. So I have never seen the graphical interface. I never made that connection. That's actually really interesting to go, that asset. Boom.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's not on by default. This is what you get by default.
This is kind of what I remember.
Yeah. So there's the little toggle up here for that. I'll switch to this view. And when I figured out this view, it's just, for my brain, this works.
This works.
And I have it installed already, and so I'm just going to hit open, and this actually gets a little funky. Let's see if we can. This part isn't perfect. Where's my Daz Studio? Somewhere. I had Daz Studio up just a little while ago.
Did you close it?
I know. Where did it go? Oh, I just
uninstalled.
Dang it! Dang it! There it is. So when you click on the open, it just automatically brings in this. This is what they call a one-click open.
Oh, right.
I count multiple clicks here. I don't know about the rest of you, but
those are kind of just informational things. So this is what you're supposed to do. Oh, that's handy.
And I find it a little condescending, but it's fairly easy to use, and I'll live with the extra clicks. That's fine. So it's installed over and this is in the Smart Content tab. I never used Smart Content until I started just being lazy and opening stuff up with Daz Central. So my blouse is in here, and we're just going to go to the wardrobe, and I'm just going to grab the blouse over here, load that in.
There we have it.
So the process is, because I'm going to export this out as multiple materials, and we'll see what happens when we just bring that in to Substance, and then I can show you how we work around that real fast.
That's a great idea. I think this is a pitfall that anyone who gets started with Substance Painter just exports one OBJ as it is out of Daz Studio might fall into this trap that once you've set up your materials, Substance Painter will create an extra texture set per material zone. So you say you had 4 materials on an object and you bring it in, then you make your textures. Substance Painter will go and create literally 6 maps per set. So that's 24 maps it exports. And that is, of course, not really what we want, especially if all the UVs are on one map. So one of those things.
So I have a preset that just automatically sets everything to just a basic gray color.
Okay, strips textures, I like.
I'm just going to assign individual colors for each one, because Substance can then use this for us to help us separate out the materials later on.
I like it. So it's like you're creating an ID map essentially manually.
Basically, yeah. So we're kind of setting up what will become an ID map by assigning and then we're just going to export this out twice. And then we bring it into Substance. But first export, I'm just going to do File, Export. I can do this. I know how this works. And yeah, I'm just going to put it in this WIP folder here. I think, set. Yep, I'm going to just do that. I'm just going to call you shirt.
And those are OBJs, right? No.
Yeah, we're exporting out as OBJ. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, I think just about. I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page.
Tends to remember the last format you exported out in. So if you did an FBX, you'll probably want to come down here and just re-switch it back to whatever you're using. I was using OBJs last, so just default it to that. Okay, so I'm just going to save that. This brings up the dialog box. This is probably a little different than the default because it remembers some changes. One of the things, I have filtered object selected, so it just exports the selected routes. This way I don't have to do that thing a lot of people do where they hide everything else.
Clever.
Yep, so there is that.
Oh,
and another thing we're paying attention to is also right surfaces. That's not important right now, but it will be on our second export.
Okay.
So I'm just going to accept that. Goes out. I think I had it on Daz scale still.
Oh, I wasn't paying attention either. I would imagine. Let's just.
Well, we're gonna, like I said, we're exporting twice.
Good point. So NFT, it says Brian. Yeah, beautiful.
And this one is going to be a version with no surfaces. So I'm just going to do that. And I have it custom, but it's 100%. That's a Daz scale. When I'm working at Blender, I do 1% to Blender and then 10,000% back because Blender works on a scale of meters versus centimeters in Daz. Okay, so what I am going to, one change, I'm just going to take off right surfaces.
Nice.
So there's no surface information going to the second version. So when Substance brings it in, it's just one map.
And we don't have to deal with the multiple texture sets it would create if you wouldn't do that.
Exactly. So I'm just going to export that.
I like it's actually really simple to do. You don't have to amalgamate surface zones that way. You just go no surfaces, the end, and then that's right. All you need.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so that's it for Daz. That's
cool.
The Daz portion. And then we'll just bring this over into Substance. And I'm going to just show you what happens if we bring that in without, just bring in with the materials.
Right, as if you only had made one export and it would have contained materials. Exactly. That's a good idea.
It's what every Substance user does the first time if they're working with materials.
Yes.
I'm going to just open that up, and I like to work at 4,000. And most software uses OpenGL, so of course this opens up to something else.
DirectX. We'll talk more about those intricacies later on the line, but yeah, we need to change this to OpenGL.
And I'm doing this because somebody on a YouTube video told me to do that. So
okay, what does it say?
Sounds good.
Tangent space for good stuff. Yeah, I like it.
And there we go. So our shirt is now in here, but you can see over, I don't know, is that showing up? I've got my zoom in the way.
It is, yes, it's correct. You're seeing essentially the material zones, each of which has one UV set essentially for Substance.
Exactly. So if we switch, each one of these then would be set out individually as a material zone if we when we export the materials. I'm gonna just pop over. Let's switch back to here. I'm just going to find an asset real quick. And my arrangement's a little bit different than other people. A lot of times the asset libraries or the properties are down in the corner here instead.
Yes, older videos. I think Victoria, was it Victoria? No, it was Sci-Fi Babe actually said some older YouTube videos are really confusing because the asset library used to be at the bottom the shelf. And when people still refer to it as a shelf, that is really difficult sometimes. I totally agree with that. It's it's when Adobe bought it, they kind of moved things around a little.
And there's different ways of doing things too. So there's ways of doing it through the texture sets or the ways through the menu. So I may not be doing it the way you see other people do it. So what am I doing? I'm doing assets. I'm looking for fabrics.
Yes.
And I'm just going to pop over to Smart. And I'm just going to grab something like fabric synthetic dots and just drop it on there.
And boom.
And it applied to one of the materials.
Yes, only one set, yeah.
Which actually I can just kind of drag, and I'm just going to plop that onto the others. It's got this little zone here for holding the buttons in place. And we have that. So, let's say I did all my stuff, and then I'm just going to export out textures. I'm just going to do the default export for right now. Actually, let me save this because it will add the file name to the files that it exports. So let me just do a file, save as. no, I just put an E in front there. I saw that. And there's an 8. Not so many 8s in shirt, I understand. Okay. And now when we do the file export textures, and I'm just going to leave the default. So you can set up presets, which I have done for my output templates. So you can see my stuff. It always has the Seacox, so I can find stuff easily when searching.
So this is
you can define different ways of what gets exported out.
Right, what types of maps? Like if you do clothing, it's very unlikely that you need an emissive map usually.
Exactly.
Metallicity map sometimes, but not always. So often you just need the 4 maps instead of like 6 or 7.
Exactly. Right. So I'm just going to do the default in this case, and then just
for demo purposes, because don't forget this is how not to do it essentially, because we're having like all these maps that are being exported here.
And there you can see it just generated. I can't even count. I can go to this. I like this button here. I love that.
That is very handy. Yes.
Go to output directory, and I immediately. Oops. I'm going to just delete everything because I got old stuff in here. And it's just easier to just do this.
You delete it and export it again, then we can count.
Exactly. And
X201
the export is pretty quick.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. X201 was asking what are the licensing terms on the textures provided by Adobe. Also, good question. I believe it is much like many of the asset stores, so it's fully commercially licensable for products you make. So if you were to offer up a texture set for an item on the Daz store, if you make a model and you use Painter to make your own textures, you can sell those, like what you make the materials, but you cannot sell the asset as is. So you can't just download their what's it called, the SBR file, and then just sell that as yours. Now that you can't do, but you can use Painter to make textures and then sell the textures. So that is possible.
Yeah, that's the way I understand the licensing as well. So what did we get here?
24.
It says 24.
That's 24. And that is, that's if you want literally one material that has 4 maps across 4 material zones, this is not what you want.
Right. So I'm just going to delete those because that's not what we want to do. And we're just going to go back and redo this again.
Right. With your
way to get them all onto individual maps. It's still going to be separated out, normal map from color map and things. All right, so close that. Close that. I'm just going to say file new. And this is where that one with no surfaces comes in that we exported earlier. So this time I'm going to bring in the one with no surfaces.
No surface.
I'm going to bring that in. And I'm going to just do the same thing again. I could probably save a template file.
One day
I say that every time I do
out.
this. And I'm going to just discard that because we don't need it. And this time it comes in and you can see it is just one UV tile there and all of our textures on there, but it's just one material at this point. So we need a way to kind of differentiate between the different zones.
Right, yes.
So there's the baking process, which gives it a bunch of information that allows it to do the cool things like know where the edges are and where the crevices are and things along that line. So we didn't do that on the other one because I was really demonstrating that. But here we're going to just bake mesh maps.
Got to do that, indeed.
I have typically done the ID separately, but I think I'm going to try it, doing it with all of this at the same time this time.
Yeah, it'll work.
And when you can do that. So what I would normally do is I would normally just bake all of that stuff. Then I would just bring in my model and bake the ID map. But I'm going to try bringing in. So what we're going to do is we take this and it has the colors that we assigned to it. And Substance can grab those colors and make what's called an ID map.
So I suppose the important aspect of this baking process to understand is that we load in, like when you make your new project, file new, you use the OBJ without any material information. And then when you bake the maps out, you pick the one that has materials, in fact, that has your different material colors assigned per surface. And that's the second file that Chris is loading in here under high definition meshes. And this allows Substance to infer this ID map. So it's literally looking at filled out patches on the UVs that says, hey, this is a different color than that. And we can then use that as selections for masks to apply materials onto particular sections of the object.
Yes, that's what we're using. Also, there are people, if you're doing high res and low res modeling, you can use the high res modeling to bake in your normal maps and your height maps and things into the low res. So that's also what you can do with this.
Do you know, this is, I think, what it's actually designed for. So in game assets, you usually have, say you had a character that's been sculpted at extremely high resolution in ZBrush with 5, 6, 8 million polygons. That is not something you could bring into a game engine or in regards to here, our Daz characters. Daz Studio would have a hard time just moving that many polygons. And we wouldn't want that as geometry. We usually reduce the mesh, decimate the mesh, and then we use the high-res model so that all these little intricate crevices and stuff, they can still be baked in. Like it's an ambient occlusion map and a height map and a normal map and all that. And this is where we'd add that really high-res file, and we'd still use a low-res file to then put the actual high-res textures on. So this is helping Substance to essentially create that information.
Yep, and you can see that right there. It actually says high definition mesh. In our case, they're the same definition mesh, just one has the material zones. Okay, so I'm gonna, and these always have to be set. Like I said, if I saved, I cranked these down to the as small as they go to help the a word just fell out of my brain. to increase the resolution of the calculations. I think the smaller it is, it probably takes longer to calculate, but I don't notice the difference. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to come over, make sure the ID is pulling from the source material color.
Right.
So this will pull in those colors we assigned in Daz and use those for our IDs.
Gotcha.
I'm going to just crank these rays up in here.
Ooh, okay.
I saw that on a YouTube video. it seems to make nicer results that way.
Okay, so it bakes higher res maps under the hood that Substance can use to infer all these things like, edge wear and stuff and ambient occlusion and things.
And I imagine cranking all those up increases the baking time, but it's not that long, but you can kind of, now that we've got everything set, I'm just going to say bake default materials here. And you can see as it does its calculations.
Very pretty, I have to say. And yes, I do love my coffee. Absolutely, Sage. It is true. And I assure you, it is coffee. Just black coffee. Nothing else. Julia can vouch for that. My moderators today, by the way, are Julia as well as Zero Calvin, aka the Brian, and Dragonade, aka the Nathan. Very good for you to come on board. I always love having you here. Thank you. And yes, the baking process does take a little bit longer with those values increased. So,
which worked out fine. It gave you a chance to call out all the mods.
Indeed,
that was all part of our plan. All right, say okay, it's done baking, and then we can kind of look through. You can see all the different channel maps. Actually, down here, the mesh maps, the normal ID. There's that ID
There's
map
that ID
made over in Daz.
Same beautiful colors you've picked there.
Yeah, aren't those gorgeous? Ambient occlusion, so these things, the curvature and the ambient occlusion, really are helpful for helping get that definition and stuff. I'm just going to go back to our basic material. I'm hoping you have some understanding of how Substance works. We're not going through step by step. There was the Spider-Bot tutorials, though, that I thought were very good.
Right, yes. Those,
I think you did those as well, right?
Good point. Yes, I did that. That's on the official Adobe Substance channel, Brian. If you can dig out that link, that would be awesome. There's a couple of other fairly good getting started guides. One is by Fugazi. You know him as Fugazi. John is his name. He's a seller on Renderosity as well as the Daz Store. And he has a YouTube channel called the 3D Megaverse. And he has like a 30-part series on Substance Painter. And I found that very, very helpful to get started. So, have a look at that.
Yeah. So what I think I'm going to do, I think I'm going to pop over to Substance.
Thanks, Brian.
3D Assets and grab a fabric. I'm going to combine. I'm going to just do something really wild just so we can see the differences here. I think maybe fabric shirt with leather
Oh
trim.
yeah.
so we can kind of just see what's going on here, just for contrast. So I'm just going to pop over here. We'll just go all assets and fabric, and
They do have nice fabrics,
just
I've got to
something
say.
like that.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to, and you can see it comes with variations for this material. I'm just going to download that.
And Tammy's just confirmed the license terms, so textures can be used for personal and commercial projects. So yeah, same as what I understand. Good stuff. Always helps when we're on the same page.
Yeah, so we're going to copy that. We're going to pop back over into Substance and load in that. I wish this was better integrated, but unfortunately, I wish I could just grab, and I think once upon a time when it was just Substance, you could just pull the library in from here. But I think the Adobe lost that at some point.
Oh, I see. So import resources, that's the only way I know how to get resources in there.
I've seen older videos where they kind of went through some magic in Substance to bring them in, and it seems to have gone away.
Okay.
So I'm just going to do add resource. And of course, it is looking where I got the shirt from, which doesn't do me. I just throw all my stuff. I got to admit, I'm pretty sloppy about where this goes. The standard Adobe, Substance Painter, assets, materials.
Oh, that's where you filed it. Gotcha.
Drop it right in there.
Gotcha, yeah. And then at least you got the downloads in one folder. I'm terrible. I just put it just ends up in the downloads folder. And then I import the assets like this from downloads, and then at least it's in my asset library. But of course, if that ever gets destroyed, I'd have to go and re-download all the material. So
right,
not good.
So I think that there's one other thing. It's not letting me change that, is it? It's a base material, and it's not going to let me change that.
I think you have to.
I do have to say whether or not I'm just going to use it in the current surge, in the current session for just this project, or my entire asset library. I almost always just say, yeah, add it to my assets. I'm probably just going to want to be able to browse and grab it later.
Like tomorrow, next week. And it still doesn't let you add the things. That's interesting.
Okay, so did that come in? That did. It's right there.
That's the one.
Yep. So I just drag, and we're going to just put it on the shirt. So I'm just going to hold the control key down, drag that, and you can see it's letting me drop onto a particular ID.
That is handy.
Drop that right onto the shirt.
That is handy. So you don't have to. Yeah, that's quite nice. You can just drag and drop directly onto the ID.
And so that sets up. I know you had your properties down here. Mine's up here. So that basically sets up. Where are my layers? There's my layers. So I know you manually were setting this up earlier, where you're adding the mask to your layer, and then you add the color selection. That basically sets it all up just by holding Control key down and dropping it.
Right.
So we'll do it the other way too, just so you can see how that's done as well. So let me get a leather in here, and we'll drop that in here.
I think I might set up my Substance Painter like you have, because the assets you don't need displayed all the time, but the material, the properties you do, and I find them very scrunched up at the bottom left. So I'd like for them to have more room. So I might just do that.
Yeah, and I find if I'm looking for an asset, I'm not necessarily needing to be in the properties. And I'm just going to I downloaded this off of, I believe, the Substance, and I'm not going to hold the Control key down this time and just drag it, and it just basically layers on top of everything. So
it now flood fills the whole object.
Exactly. But if we hide that, you can see our stuff underneath it's just like layers in like Photoshop or other programs you may be used to. And you can see that's kind of a big pattern there. So we can come up here, and like Jay was doing earlier, we can just kind of tweak the tiling.
Could you maximize your window, Chris?
Oh, yeah.
Like for smaller screens, it's just, nice to have it.
Sorry
like boom.
about that. And you can just, tell it which channels this particular layer is working with. And they tend to blend. I think in this case, some of these channels are blending in with the channels underneath it. So
right.
Even though this is on top, it is kind of blending in with the bump and the height maps underneath. As you see, as I hide that, you can see the impact.
Indeed.
But the color map is covering on top. So, and then the alternate way, instead of adding the color selector, so we can just get the leather on just the parts we want. So we can just
add the mask with color
mask.
selection.
Yep. And then come over here and we'll just add the color selection.
Right.
And that's over here. And then we can just pick
color
the colors.
Picker and go boom.
Yep. And I want that color. I want that to be on the collar.
I like it.
Want that to be on the cuffs.
Leather cuffs. Mm-hmm.
Yes, fancy.
Groovy. And now notice the material from underneath does not blend in with the leather anymore. Now you have 100% leather
in the material section.
Oh, good point. Yes, it's I have mine small with a description next to it, and this is how you do that. Indeed. So I think default is small or medium. Yes, I think that's the one.
I think I've got mine on large, but yeah, you can change those.
Mm-hmm. And then
right
there's also some kind of list view. Exactly, that's the other one. So yeah, that's sometimes helpful to make it large. It's our eyes.
Yeah.
You know.
I know. Despite the fact I got a giant monitor in front of me, I still have it set to large.
Robert was asking an interesting question. Is it for personal use and not for distribution? Is it better to use Substance Painter or just to buy basically a set of generic shaders from the Daz store and use them for your products? It's an interesting question. I think for occasional use, shader sets are great on the Daz store because you don't have to think about it. You just drag and drop them onto your objects or your clothing that you want to change. And you find something funky, you go, hey, this is really very user-friendly, and you can still change the tiling and the size of it depending on your objects. And it's easy because it's pre-set up. I think this is a great way to get started. You end up with
something that looks kind of like this.
Yes, so you would never be able to do tweaks on it and go the next level and make it really your own material. There's always it's made the way it's made, and that'll get you a certain mileage out of it. But if you want to break out of that, you're kind of stuck. And I think this is where Substance Painter comes in.
Right, and I tend to be I usually will just use a dirt and an edge wear. I'm fairly simplistic, but it adds that. It really kicks it up to the next level, I think. So we're going to just do that.
But also, I mean, just to finish that thought off, it's really important to not just go and buy it and then be overwhelmed by it. So make sure you're comfortable with 3D and you're kind of ready for the next step, as it were. So, if you've been using Daz Studio for 6 months and you're just getting into 3D, then hold off on it. If you've been using 3D for a while and you're thinking, hey, I might want to release my own texture sets and maybe even use these textures in Blender or other 3D applications, then Substance might be for you.
Yeah. Okay, so I've added a fill layer. We put our black mask on that. I'm going to just add a generator to that.
Generator.
There it is, generator. So this is the thing that gives you the dirt and the edge. These are the ones that come with it. I'm going to go with the dirt to start with. And I'm going to switch this over because the dirt kind of works into the crevices. So I tend to make that a darker color. Or you could pull in a material in here. I usually will just use a color.
Use a color, yeah.
For our purposes.
Oh,
so you can kind of see how the dirt.
Look at that. I mean, but you can see the power that you turn an overall that just has basically a denim fabric on it into a worn, dirty overall that somebody's been using in a workshop or something. So very, very cool.
And we can adjust that, I think. It's not my generator. No, I'm back in I got to go back to the generator to make the adjustments. Did I not add the generator? There's the generator.
There it
is. And then you can adjust the levels in here.
Indeed.
You get more dirt, less dirt. You can tweak the contrast.
And the whole generator is a bit like in Photoshop. So I think of this as a 3D version of Photoshop. So the whole dirt layer is now on a completely different layer. So if you wanted one material clean and one dirty, you could just switch the whole layer off, and then you have just the plain fabric again. That's kind of nice too. Cool.
So I think I'm just going to be a little over the top with this today.
she's been sweating a lot. That's, you know.
Yeah, and there's a way to adjust I think the edge masking maybe will take it a little. And then maybe I can back this off a little bit. Your underarms are a lot stronger than I would really like, but then I don't get the effect elsewhere. That's the problem. It's dialing that in. That's the tweaky part.
It's also a lot of fun. I have to say, there's a lot of fun just to play with sliders and go, hey, oh my God, that does that, and that generated is this, and yeah.
I am going to go over the top. And one thing to note is if you do have something that like opens up like a box, I think the classic case is a box. If you have where the lid closes, you want to kind of, when you bring it in here, make sure the lid's opened up so that you can get on the inside. Otherwise, the whole thing just ends up black on the inside. And you can't really texture that.
Right. So it's almost like worth, if you're doing clothing texturing, not using the A pose and instead using a T pose. That might be easier, but it's one of those things.
We actually could have done that too.
We could have, couldn't we?
Yeah, because it doesn't care. It just wants the UVs, and if, you know, as long as we're not changing the UVs, we can put in whatever pose we want, texture it, and then bring it back. Yes,
it's not like when you make morphs where you have to have a particular, like say the base figure in the A pose, then you make your morph and you bring it back, and you know, it's not, you don't have to be that particular about it. You can move objects around, you can move things away. Like if you had buttons on the blouse, you could literally go and select them and just move them to a completely different place and then export them, get them textured, and then bring those textures in. So that's you know, that is also possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm just going to add a edgeware layer real quick here. So just do another fill, another black mask, another generator. This time there's a couple of edgewares. There's a metal edgeware and a fiberglass edgeware. I'm just going to go with the fiberglass because it's fiber. So we'll just do that. And in this case, I'm just going to tone that down just a skosh, maybe make it a little warmer. Something like that.
Just a tint. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, they did fix the eyedrop tool. I don't know if anybody's used Substance before with the eyedrop tool. It did not work before, basically, and now is that going to work? Nope.
Don't you have to hold something down? Was it like Alt or
there
something?
It goes. Oh, you click on it now.
There we go.
And
okay.
So I can pick colors, but I don't know if you noticed, my screen got big.
Oh yeah, actually something nasty's happened. I don't know what it was, but it shouldn't have happened.
So that's not you. That is Substance resizing everything.
Oh,
with the
okay. That's
tool.
Substance doing things. Oh, I see.
Mm-hmm.
I was just getting ready to panic. Good stuff. I will stop that then.
Yes, don't panic.
So this
is all part of Substance's plan. So
Substance's way of letting you. Gotcha. That's how it works. Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm. Which is better than before, because before it just wasn't, there was something, it wasn't getting it right. And it could have been because of the monitor issue or something.
Right.
I think there was a question there about Daz, there are layers and overlay shaders. There are, but they're not necessarily specific to the edges and things of your object. So you can do overlay effects and stuff. But the thing with Substance is it calculates where edges are and how things are related to each other in the mesh. And it allows you to impact that.
Like the overlay shaders, you mean you could basically go, if you had a flat sheet of metal and you put a metal shader on that, you can then overlay kind of a dirt overlay over that. But what you couldn't do is say, I want the edge of an object worn more than the rest of it. You'd have to, it would be messy. That's not that you couldn't really do that. You'd have to, if you really pernickety, you'd have to create a material zone just for the edge, but then how do you fade that out on the edges? So this is something that's difficult to do, and this is where Substance Painter does help. So some of the good clothing creators like Victoria, for example, in the chat, great to see you, by the way. I'm a big fan. She would probably use Substance Painter, and many people have brought you shaders on the Daz Store, they would probably have originated through a system like this.
Yeah, and you can see how strong, you can see actually it's coming through the
of course
shading through the collar.
Right, yes.
turning black in there. But anyhow, that's just a quick overview of how to do that.
And we'll have a look into more examples of that after this. Let's see how we can go and bring this back now so we can see all this masterpiece inside Daz Studio.
Exactly. So now when we do our export texture, I'm just going to go with the standard for today, and I'm just going to hit export that. And this time you can see
6 maps only, which is nice.
Yes, so this time we just only got the 6 maps for the stuff we need. Some of these we aren't even going to really need.
True, indeed. Like the emission map is not part of the textures, or the metalness map. We don't have anything metal on this particular one. So if you had, say, buttons and you wanted the buttons to be metal and you drop a metal material on there, then it would have information, and in that case you'd retain it. Or if you had like a sci-fi outfit and you had like whatever glowy strips on the side of your shoulder, then you'd have information. But we don't. So boom.
In this case, I'm going to just get rid of those. I'm just going to cut these. And then I'm going to stick them into a Daz folder.
That's how you do that. So you leave everything in the default export maps folder that Substance gives you, and then you copy what you. Oh, that's interesting. I keep selecting.
I just find it easier
every time.
Instead of having it search for where I want to save. I just save it and then move it.
That's clever, because that means leave the default folder, keep it clean as you can, and just move whatever you need into the appropriate folder. Because in reality, if you're releasing this as a Daz product, it needs to go in a completely different location anyway. So you might as well do that right away. So that's what clever people do. Good stuff.
Yes. What are you? There you are. Okay, so here's I have this already set up as one of my Daz content folders. So we're just going to go down into a runtime directory, textures, vanity folder. Everybody's got it. You got to have the vanity folder.
You got to have it, yes.
There you go. And we'll just put it down here. Daz shirt.
And yes, Yoshi, it was. This used to be an algorithmic program, and it used to be called Algorithmic Substance Painter and the Substance Suite. And Adobe went ahead and said, we'll have that. And then they bought Algorithmic, essentially, and eventually was rebranded. And now we have it. It's called Adobe Substance Painter.
Okay, so now these are ready to go into Daz.
Aha.
So we're going to go back to Daz.
The fun part.
Yep. And I'm going to bring this back up here. I'm going to let's switch back to here. So now we're going to apply these to this. Although earlier this year, I had one of those moments when I realized you can hide channels. you can actually come over here and set a channel to be hidden, and then save that as a shader preset. So what I have done is, this is just noisy. So when I'm loading in all my textures in here, it's hard for me to find things.
Yes.
So I have and I saved it as a script, basically.
Clever.
And it's just basically a shader with a couple of tweaked settings for where I like to start with PBR materials, and basically hides everything else. Did that work?
No.
Probably because I'm still showing. Nope. Let's try that. And that now. Of course, it doesn't work on stream.
Of course, it doesn't work on stream.
I think actually that worked, but I have. There we go. The simulation stuff is showing.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. Now it's gone.
Yeah,
good stuff.
It's a D-Force item, so there's simulation items. We don't need those on right now, so I'm just going to hide those. So this makes it a lot easier for me to spot.
Yes, the Iray Uber shader has so many channels. We only need 4. So if you know where they are, they're relatively easy to find. But if you don't, then Brian, see if you can find that shader. I think it's available for free from your Ko-fi page, isn't it, Chris?
Yes, it is. It's on my Ko-fi page in my shop there. We don't have a metallicity map, so we're just going to crank that down. We have this base color. We can just come over to the folder, drag and drop.
Drag it in there. White color, I like it.
And we're going to, what is this? The roughness. That's the glossy roughness right there.
Bit of roughness.
So that goes into, am I looking at right there?
That's the one.
Despite the fact of collapsing it, and it's right underneath the last thing, I still couldn't find it. I'm going to use the height map as a bump map, or you could use it as a displacement map, either. I'm going to use it as a height map because the displacement map tends to slow things down.
I think you had that just accidentally end up in the normal map there.
Did I put it? I did. Okay. We'll drop the normal in the normal map where it belongs. Did that work? Sometimes this doesn't work.
I saw you drag it there. Come on, Daz. Yes.
Did it drop that?
No.
It did not.
Oh man.
I know. Some days.
Yes, that's the other option. And
okay,
right, I think it actually did work. Yeah, I think
that one worked. Okay, there we go.
Was there. Perfect.
And then we come over here. So that's the button layer. You know what? I should have just selected all of these and done them at the same time.
Oh, okay.
I
wouldn't have thought about that either. I just do that and copy paste on the other materials.
I normally remember to do that, but of course on stream I wouldn't. But we can just copy select surfaces, select everything, and just paste it.
And go boom.
There we go.
There we have the masterpiece inside Daz Studio.
I'll switch to iRay real quick. Hopefully that doesn't kill stream too much.
Why would it work on stream? Yes, this is a good point. Thank you, Brian. Exactly.
And more or less, that's the quick. So that's the rough way of doing it. So that's the actually, well, I don't usually export out of Daz to texture and substance because I work with Blender. But if you're just working with Daz and Studio, this is how it's done.
Nice.
And my lights are a little wonky, so that's the reason why these edges look odd.
But I mean, in principle, it's essentially the same stuff that you saw in Substance Painter. So that's kind of a nice proof of principle so far. And yeah, it's not a masterpiece. We all agree on that. But as something that opens up all these possibilities to getting more mileage out of existing assets, I think it's great. If you had anything from furniture that needs different kind of shine on the wood to clothing items that you want to make completely different things to, there's a marvelous array of kind of selection tools that you have in Substance Painter as well, that if you had something in which you wanted to have a different normal map or different pattern on a different part of the item that doesn't have an ID or doesn't have a color ID, we can talk about that. There's a stitch overlay generator that you can use. It's marvelous for both closing as well as hard surface props. So yeah, absolutely.
So was there a question?
Does it save it as a subset of the initial shirt, or does it save it as an AR asset? I don't even know what an AR asset is, Yoshi, to be honest.
Yeah.
And yes.
Which are you referring to? Are you referring to Daz or Substance?
Right, good point. So this is, I mean, if you wanted to save this out now.
It does. We would have to tweak the settings. And that's where, what we were talking about earlier is maybe putting it into a T pose instead of the A pose.
Right.
For exporting it out.
Shows. Indeed, yeah.
So if we did that, we wouldn't get and we could still. And the UV map doesn't change, even though we're reposing the figure. And that's the thing that Substance is really working with.
So with this pose, it could now go and still calculate the edges on the on the collar, but it wouldn't give you that harsh kind of ambient occlusion underneath the arms, and it would still calculate the curvature of the arms and the body correctly without going overboard there. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I'm still not sure what Yoshi's asking there.
I suppose, show us just quickly how you would go inside Daz Studio. If you've made your asset, show us quickly how you would save this as a material preset or a shader.
Oh, it's a shader. Yeah, let's.
Either
doesn't
option.
Have to do that. So yeah, I mean, basically grab this content library. This is I think the blank I can't see because my zoom's in the way. Sorry. Hopefully you can't. I'm trying to move the zoom somewhere. I don't think you can see the zoom on stream, but
no.
So I have my test. What do we have here? I have a people folder. I've got a dentist, clothing, vanity. I would create a subfolder down here. Probably Daz shirt. This is where we would actually save our asset, or where your asset would be saved. And then in here, I would probably stick a material folder.
As you would, indeed.
We do shaders or materials. Materials, of course, you could save all at once and apply all at once. Shaders, you could apply to just the individual zones. But because of this way it's mapped, well, here, I'll save it as a shader to start with.
Yeah, shows both. It's a nice way to have both options.
Yep. So we got that in our folder here. I'm going to click on the little plus here. I'm going to save as a... Actually, I need to select one.
Yeah, just one, yeah.
One surface. And we'll select as a shader. And we're just going to call you Daz Shirt Default.
Do you know what the difference between a shader and a material preset is? Just as a rule of thumb. If yes, then that's cool. If not, then do let me know and we'll explain that.
And you can actually choose which parts you want. So you don't have to save everything. Most people, and you generally will, but if you're making a custom one that just changes the gloss of something, you could just do that by selecting only the materials you want to save. In this case, we're just going to save the whole thing. But you have the options of just saving the portions of the shader you want. Which
is nice. Like in your case, you don't have to save simulation presets because they wouldn't make sense on another item. You can save them separately that way. But on this item, if you wanted to use this shader on a different item, it wouldn't really make sense to have simulation things.
Right. Well, it lets you have different finishes. But still, you can keep this. So, for example, I have these little shaders here that just basically changes the finish.
Oh, yes.
of the cloth. I don't know if it's and of course it's not that apparent, but some are a little glossier than others, and all they're doing is they're just changing some of the gloss settings.
Gotcha.
So you can just do that. So you get those options when you save to go in and choose the components you want to save. In this case, we just saved the default settings
of the one channel.
Shader,
of the one surface, actually, yeah.
Yeah, so if I just reset that whole shirt, and we select, just say the button layer here, we apply the shader, that just goes to the button layer.
Sweet.
And so if we put that onto the shirt, and so it just, and we have it kind of split up in zones, so you're getting different zones and different from the same shader. I don't know if that makes any sense. My brain isn't parsing it right.
Tux was asking, let's say, do explain it. Okay, no worries. So the shader is essentially a generic collection of surface properties, and they can be applied to any surface. They might not always make sense. So like a tileable shader would make sense on any surface. It doesn't matter if it's a sphere or a box or a shirt. A tileable shader would work on any of these objects. But a material preset looks at this is a good example. If you apply that shader to the sphere, technically it'll work. It might not look great because it's not tiled.
Yeah, it's UV mapped to the shirt. So what you do is you kind of like see your...
It's kind of, something happens. But if you were to try this with a material preset, try to apply the material preset to the sphere, Daz Studio would not do anything because it says, hey, the surface zones are basically specified in a material preset. If you had a material preset for this shirt with like these 4 surfaces, it would only work on this shirt and not on a different object.
Right. And where the shader just saved out whatever surface we were on, the material preset saves the material sets here. Well, it lets you choose, I think, actually, which material sets from the object you have selected.
Right, yes, you can specify material preset to only apply to the collar, for example, or only apply to the sleeves or something. That is possible, yeah.
Yeah, so in this case, you can choose these, and like with a shader, you can also change those settings if you want to. There's that flexibility in there, although generally, just to do that, save. Is it thinking?
I think it's done thinking. Is it still thinking?
No, still thinking.
Oh, yeah. Good point, Tux. Good point.
And so sometimes I save things as materials, sometimes as shaders, depending on what sort of flexibility there is with the objects?
So from a user's point of view, often clothing creators, sometimes they give you both options. Sometimes they usually save things as material presets when it's applicable only to one clothing item. And the advantage is that you don't have to use a different tool. So if you're, say, in the 3D manipulator and you had your shirt selected and you apply a material preset, it'll work. But if you try to apply a shader, a surface needs to be selected for the shader to be applied. So hence you have to either select it in the surfaces tab, or you have to go and change to a different tool, pick the surface, apply the shader, change back to your 3D manipulator, and then move the object. So, it's depending on the situation.
Here we are in the scene. We have the shirt selected. Just click on the material. Boom. It just applies everything onto the object.
Yes. Victoria said it well.
Take a shader, nothing happens because it doesn't have a surface selected.
It doesn't have a surface selected. Victoria said it well. A shader is like a flood fill, and a material is like a UV and matte zone specific. That's exactly how that works. Yes.
So, and you could always just go in there and individually select, but you have to have surfaces selected for the shaders to work.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Boom, baby. Yes.
Yeah, and keep in mind, you can always just select the whole object with all its surfaces at once, just right here by clicking at the top, grabs them all. So sometimes that's handy. You can kind of shift and grab just the ones you want. The control tab lets you deselect or select. So those are the basic functions over there. Okay,
Robert had a good question. If an item only has one surface area, can you use Substance Painter to create new zones? Or you need to do that in Blender or Daz Studio? You can't do it in Substance Painter, but you can do it in Daz Studio with the geometry editor. So you can do that. If you wanted to have, say, something like the bottom rim of the shirt, or you had something like something that you wanted to dedicate as a new material zone, you could just go and use the geometry editor, make your selection, and then create a new surface from that.
Yeah, and time permitting, you were going to show that too.
Yes, indeed. Yes, absolutely. Shall I do that? Let me go over
to, you want to do that
my
now?
Screen. Yeah, indeed, and then I'll show that quickly before I'll show you some other funky things. Like there's so much you can do with Substance. I thought it worked really well last time when we saw the whole process multiple times, and then the details, and then you do it again and again and again, and then eventually it just kind of grows on you because we just all learn by repetition. So yeah, let me just show you that. I'll go quickly over to.
So you're going to open up an object, assign some materials, some extra surfaces to it, and then texture that with Substance.
Yes, indeed, that is possible. Just quickly for the maybe a primitive here, I'll use a sphere, as simple as we can make it. That comes in by default just with one. I'm on the surfaces tab here. That only comes in with one default surface. And if you wanted to make multiple, then you can go into this guy here. That's the geometry editor. You can also reach it from here under Tool, Geometry Editor, and you have to have your tool settings open for that to show you those relevant bits and pieces. So it's a really powerful tool that you have in Daz Studio. I find it helpful if you switch it over to something like wire texture shaded, just so that you see where the geometry is. And then depending on your selection mode, you can go and make a selection. So anything that's yellow here is selected now, and you have options to do symmetry as well. I'm just going to go maybe do something like this. It looks like a bit like a face here. And so that's your selection. And then you head over to surfaces here, and then you right click on that and say create surface from selected. And then you'd say, I don't know, face, for example. And now you have two surface zones here. Default, that's the one that we already had. And then we have face, or anything else you want to call it. And now you can go and treat them differently. So I'll go back to my regular, maybe my surface selection tool, and you can see that those light up individually. And you can have one in green and one in red, for example. Like say default, make that one color, perhaps not quite that aggressive. That could be green, and then the face could be, I don't know, could be Could be red. So yeah, that's how you can do that in Daz Studio already. And then if you have Daz shaders, you can go and apply different shaders to that. So that's kind of nice. And in Substance Painter, technically we could do that there as well. You could just go and select those things in Substance Painter as well. Good point, actually. Let me show you how
you can actually make your own masks in Substance Painter.
You can do, right? So you don't have to really. Yes, right. Indeed. You don't have to have that ID map. So let's have a look at that. If I go, I'm going to use a different item from the same collection here.
Yeah, it's just using ID maps is an easy way for us to set up our more or less masks.
Right.
In Substance.
Was it this one here or was it that one? This one here. I think the Casual Fashion Volume 2 outfit, because it's got that cowl neck. Let me go and show you that. So I'm not going to go and put it into the A pose. I'm just going to go and leave it as it is for now. And does this have different zones here? No, it doesn't. So this is a great example. This only has one surface, and I don't have multiple. So this is good. So let me go and use this and show you how to put something like a pattern, say a different pattern on the arm, or with a different rotation on the arm and on the cowl compared to the rest of the body. Yeah, let's do that. So I'll go and export it out first of all. And because I don't have the need for an ID map here, I'll just export it out once. So that will work in this case as well. I might go and I've got a new folder here, Substance Stream, I'll just call it, and I'll just make a new folder in here just in case we have a different item. And this is going to be called, what was it called again? The sweater. Perfect. And I will call this sweater as well as OBJ. And so I think, this is my PC here, yes. So the easiest way to get started with the export options, if you do it manually, is by just using the Daz Studio default. You've got the size correctly and everything. I only have the one item in here, so you could do what Chris did, and if you had multiple, you just go and use this here, selected roots. I don't have to worry about it, so I can literally just go use Daz Studio. I think the only thing that is important is to disable this here, write normals. I think that is one thing that they recommend you don't do. And since I only have the one surface zone, I can just go and switch that off like Chris suggested as well. So I'll do that. And then I hit accept. And that's my OBJ exported. And now in Substance Painter, I'll go, I don't think I need to save this. I'll go and start a new project. And this is how this has caused me great confusion when I started with Substance Painter. Like if I just, where do I specify my file? You have to have a new project for that. I just didn't know that. So one of those things. I'll go under Substance, no, that's the wrong folder. Substance Stream, Sweater, only one object, open. And this is something else we haven't quite talked about, the document resolution versus the baked maps and textures resolution. I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, Chris, but this here is just something that'll be apparent while I work with the object in this viewport, but it has no bearing on the baked maps, correct?
Yeah, that's what I understand, something to that effect.
I think so too. And I've noticed that 1024 means if you do leave that on this default with assets that we're dealing with, I find that sometimes you zoom into the object and it looks a little fuzzy, as if your textures aren't quite there. So I'm like you, I probably use either this or that. So just so that the viewport performance is, you know, that is just looks better in the viewport. So either 2K or 4K, but I find that very low poly here, or very low res really. I'll use this. And like we said before, OpenGL, the difference I think is that the normals, when they're baked out, the green channel points the wrong way. And it kind of really depends on which render engine you're using as a, you know, when the maps come out. For Daz Studio, we need OpenGL. That's all we need to know really. And then hit OK. Then discards that, and that brings in my object. Right, so now if I look at it, I don't have an ID map. Well, first of all, we haven't baked anything, so let's do that first. So edit, bake mesh maps. I don't have a second object, so I can just leave everything as it is. And I'll maybe stick with 2K here. And I'm going to leave all the parameters at their default, but Chris has shown you how to make that, you know, a bit more sophisticated. So bake selected textures. And that'll do its thing. And it all looks very pretty, doesn't it? I always like how it does this. It's kind of nice. Ta-da, perfect. So the Flip Normal guys have also got some very cool Substance tutorials on their channel. If you want to check those out, they always recommend just remove this regular paint layer. That's just something that lets you paint directly on the object. And they say make a fill layer first. And in the fill layer, you can then go and apply something like a material or like a pattern. So I might not actually just use a full material. I might just go and use just a channel, and just go and just use a height channel here. So you can go and switch all the others off, and then just put information in the height channel. And I'm going to go and use a material here. So you can go and click on this and choose something like fabric. Do we have anything? Fabric? No, that's not it. Was it him? Yeah, there we go. That's what I mean. That's a texture fabric. Anything will do. Maybe something like that. Yeah, there we go. Is that good? I don't think that's great. Let's go and find something else. Something that's more, that just lets me see a direction better, so I can demonstrate what happens when we rotate this.
You're also filtering by procedurals there.
Oh, do I?
I do. The search box there where it says procedural texture.
Why am I
filtering out anything that isn't?
Am I on the right thing? I think I'm on the right thing. Should it be this one here? Material node. That's what I really want, isn't it? No, that's also not what I want. I meant just I think I meant just this. Could also be that I'm doing it wrong. Very possible. I thought it was just, I could kind of just go and pick a fabric here. Oh, those are materials. I'm just really interested in just an alpha, really. Is that not where I do that?
Well, I mean, you can get one of those, but it will only use the height data from it.
Yes, that's what I was trying to show. Let me see if I can find one here. Something I thought. So all the preparation you do, and then of course in the heat of the moment you don't find the one thing that you're looking for. That is a bit of a shame. Yeah, I have a feeling I'm doing it wrong.
Oh, are you looking for an alpha?
I'm really looking for a pattern, don't I? Something like this. Maybe this. Something that could pass as a clothing pattern. Let's use this one here, just so that we see some direction here. Because so the point I'm trying to make is that you can apply something different to the cowl and the arms as opposed to the sweater. So maybe I'll get there eventually. So I'll go and take the tiling down to something like this, like maybe 6. Let's do that. But it applies it to the whole jumper. So if I wanted to have something different on here or on here, I can go and use this tool here, which is called the... Why does it not work, I wonder?
Are you trying to brush?
I was trying to, yeah, indeed. I was trying to bring this thing up here, the polygon fill tool. Why does it not work, you think? Oh, because I need a mask for that, don't I? Is that not what I need? A black mask? Yes, and in the mask I can do that. Right, gotcha. Actually, do I need a white mask? Man, white mask, great. So white mask means everything gets through. And if I wanted to mask off the arms and put something else on there, I think I can use this, don't I? This one here, polygon fill tool. And that lets me either paint out chunks, either triangles or squares, or I can also use the whole mesh, or I can use chunks on the UV map. So in Substance Painter, you can have a look at just the 3D that I'm using, or Chris had it this way, so you can look at both the UVs as well as your object. So I can see that the cowl here, that's this top, that's a different UV chunk, essentially, like what you have in Blender when you press L in the mesh selection, then it'll just fill in the selected bits and pieces. So if I go and just pick the cowl here with this thing here, UV chunk fill, I can go and mask this whole bit out with a different color like this. And now I can go and this pattern is not applied here, and I can apply something else there. Likewise with the arm. So I can go and pick that and that's the other arm here. Aha. So now the pattern's only here, and it's kind of equivalent to making your own material zone. And you can do other things as well. So if you wanted to, this is just a whole chunk, but if you wanted to just grab a bottom part of the arms here, you can do it in the 3D view as well. And I'll show you more of that when we try and do a little stitch here. If I don't want to use the bottom of the arm here, I think I can use the polygon fill and then just go and draw this bit out. Oops. it's a little tricky. So I don't think it has a paint selection or a loop selection just yet. But there is, I think that feature is something many people have been asking for. So you can go and draw literally things out as a mask, either with just with the square here. And those are essentially your own material zones. And it doesn't matter if it's a full material or if it's just one particular channel. So that's kind of possible. I might go and leave the arm out. Whoops. Go back to my chunk fill here and make sure. So you can do it in here, the 2D window, but you can also do it in here. And then white lets it through, black masks it off. So and then here in the, now that I know my UVs, I can go back here to my 3D view, and I might just go and rename this here body pattern. And then if I wanted to have another one just for the cowl, I could go and make myself another fill layer. And just call it cowl. And here I might also go and put like a black mask on and just make sure this is selected. So I suppose, once again, this is what I want. And go and put some other material on there now. So like, I don't actually know what, baseball cap thing like that. Oh, that's to the mask. Sorry, you need to select the material, then go and put that on there, and then only that is on here. Kind of sweet, and we didn't have an ID map to make that happen, so I like that. So it doesn't really look great right now, but I suppose, let me make one for the arms as well. Let me go make another one, call that the arms here. So then go and add another black mask to it. Once again, in the polygon fill tool, I go and select this arm and that arm. And then I go and put something, I don't know, maybe copper on here, select the material here, and then head over to copper, and then, whoop, that hasn't filtered through to the other arm here. Select that as well, perfect. Groovy. So maybe on the body, because this is just the pattern, maybe we also just want to have just a color on here. Let's try that, see if I can make that happen. So for that, I think I need to go to the material again and then make sure one of the other channels is now selected, like the color channel here. And I can go and just put a base color in there not a base color, sorry, just a color, and make it, I don't know, maybe red. Again, not a masterpiece, but and now all of a sudden we have 3 material zones all made in Substance Painter with the mask selection. I guess this is something that has caused me great trouble to understand the way the masking system works. I think you kind of taught me that with the ID maps, it's a really easy way to select something. But I think that is kind of the main takeaway, that your layer stack, each channel in your layer usually has a mask on it, and the mask dictates which part of your object this is applied to. Like, this is not applied to the whole object, it is only applied to whatever I'm masking off here, like in this case the arm. So always good to rename that here. Our navigation, by the way, viewport navigation, it's like Maya. So Alt left click and drag, Alt middle mouse button and drag to pan, Alt left click and drag to rotate, and then mouse wheel to scroll. Let me go and export this out so that we can bring it back into Daz Studio. Also the manual way. So what we've also wanted to show you is another product that is fairly new on the Daz store. That is the Riversoft script, the Substance Painter Assistant. So we'll look at that in a moment. But let me just go and export this out. That is just happening by File, Export Textures. And like Chris was clever, he just uses the default directory here. I'm unclever, so I'm going to use my desktop just because I remember where things are. Then here's Substance Stream. In the sweater, I'm going to go and make a quick directory called Maps, just so that I remember. Select folder. And that's really all I think I need to pick here. Infinite dilation is okay. I'm just going to go and this here, size is interesting. Based on each texture set size. So this is the thing that I had defined when I baked the map. So in my case, it's 2K. But if you find that that wasn't enough and you wanted to have larger maps or smaller maps, you can now change that on export. So even though I've filled in my materials at 2K, I could go and get 4K maps or 8K maps out now if I wanted to do that. So that's a nice handy feature. I'm going to leave it on 2K and hit export. And go and apply that masterpiece to my sweater here. So just like before, Substance Stream, Sweater Maps. And I sadly don't have Chris's magic product, so I'm going to go just go through the channels and where they are. So the base color is here. And it won't appear as colorful as it did when we saw it in Substance Painter. That's because the base color itself has been set to kind of a gray. So I'm going to go make that white. There we have it. I might even make that kind of less white. It could be a little aggressive, so just tone that down a tad. But that's not changing the color. That's just changing the overall kind of tonality. Oh yeah, emission map we don't really need. And we do have a metal. Is this the metal? That's no, we don't. Yeah, we do have a metallic map. So metal goes into here, metallicity. And in order to take, even though I don't think we will need it. Oh yeah, we had copper arms, don't we? So I need to set that to 1. And now we have the metal value here. No metal with metal. Sweet. Then we have the height map. So height that's under base bump. Actually, that's the bump map here. And then, like Chris has shown you, you can use the height map. This is the normal map. You can use the height map either as a bump, or you can also use that under geometry in the displacement channel if you want. So it kind of depends on the effect you want. I'll put it in there just so that we can see what it does. As soon as there is a map in there, as soon as I switch it on, that's also important. I can go and set my value. Say this is only something that'll be available in the iRay preview. Let me show you what it does. It's kind of, it makes for interesting effects sometimes if you use displacement and then just crank that value up. I don't know if we're going to see it now. Yes, we do. There's a little, you can see a lot more kind of variation in there. If you really crank it up to 10, it really goes crazy. So, careful with that feature. But it's funky effects that you can make by adding height maps into the displacement channel. So I think 0.1 and minus 0.1 are the defaults, but play around with it. See if you can make.
You might want to also increase that as displacement level to help make that a finer displacement.
Yeah, let's try that. Yeah, so that it's not quite as harsh. It's essentially like more geometry that you have now. So stuff that you couldn't really do without it, and it's not geometry. This is being rendered at render time. It's kind of neat. Beautiful stuff that you can make. The puffy shirt, yes. Indeed. I think we have time for both these things. Let me show you one other thing I find exciting as we deal with making textures for clothing. That's always it wouldn't work on this jumper, so I'll use a different item. Stitches. That is always something that back in the day, Chris, we used to make that really meticulously by either stroking a path in Photoshop, or we just used to hand paint it in. And with Substance Painter, we can use a generator for that. And that's really clever. And I'll show you basically two tricks around that. So one is how to apply that, and then also how to basically remove it from parts in which we don't necessarily want the stitches. Let me see.
Or you use Marvelous Designer and you get a million polys out of that.
So, also a possibility, yes.
Yes. Not recommended though.
Not recommended. It's a shame, isn't it? Because Marvelous Designer means well and says, hey, you're a designer, you just want stitches, you might not care so much, and then they give you this and you think, yeah, well, I have to go and redo that, or I have to I can't actually use this feature if you wanted to make something that is a low poly asset. So yeah.
In all fairness, I think it does give you options just to save them as bump maps or texture maps.
It does, doesn't it? You've got the choice, export as geometry or not.
Yeah, but that first time you do it and you don't know what you're doing, and you end up going, wait a minute, all of these stitches are geometry.
Yes. Victoria, yes, quite rightly so. Stitches, the bane of my existence. Yes, absolutely. So maybe this is going to help. Let me ask you, are you into Substance Painter? Are you thinking of getting into it? Because this isn't perfect, but it's kind of nice. I think on this dress here, casual style dress, we have two material zones here, but I'm not really gonna worry about it. I'm just gonna export it and ditch the materials, and just apply this as the same thing later. And I don't need to select the arms separately, do I? No, because I think the stitch generator works with the UV maps and they'll remain intact. So I'll call this one a dress. Yeah, I'm not going to worry about the material zones. So just say dress. And once again, just from the top here, Daz Studio preset, 100% is good. We don't want surfaces, so we're ditching all the material zone information and ID maps we talked about, and I'll disable right normals. Accept. We're good. Meanwhile, in Substance Painter, new project, select your file, dress, and I'll make this 2K again, just because I can, and switches over to OpenGL. Hit OK. Hit discard.
I have had nice results using stitches in Substance Designer and zippers. It's really nice for setting up zippers too.
Oh, zippers. That is a great idea.
Zipper. This is a texture zipper, but still it kind of, gives you the normal maps and the bump maps and all of that.
I like it.
So it kind of works the same way as the stitches.
I'm going to just call this dress and find myself more like a plain fabric. So perhaps not something like this, because we're going to have trouble. Hello. Yes. Perhaps we're going to have trouble finding the actual stitches on here. So maybe just silk smooth red. Let's use this. And it's a nice material, but we don't see any stitches. So it does look like, there's something missing there. So let me go and make another fill layer here. And that's going to be my stitches layer. And I believe in here, I'm going to go and create a black mask that lets everything through. And the stitches are going to be applied as a generator to the material. I think that's how it works, isn't it? I believe so. Add generator. And the generator we want is... Oh, Chris, you've gone. What happened? Chris? Chris? Oh dear. Chris is gone. I hope he's gonna call in again. Maybe he's messaged me on Discord. Could well be. Could well be that that Chris's internet just died. Dun dun. I'll just message him. See if he comes back to me. So in the generator, I might need Chris's guidance here. So in the generator here, I'm going to go and have a look at this one here. So it's called the Auto Stitcher, and it'll look at, eventually preview image is going to come around here. There we go. It'll infer from the UV maps like a stitch pattern on the outside. So I select it, and then I see nothing, which, you know, is a shame, because I had thought we would actually see that. Maybe I've done it wrong. That is also very possible. Do I need to put it onto the mask? Is that what I do? Yes, I think so. Let's put the generator on there. Hey, you're back. Chris, how's it going?
Yay! What are you doing here?
So good to see you. Are other people joining us for the party? What happened? Did the internet just die?
I had to step away for a second.
Oh, okay. Right, so apply the generator to the mask, not the material. That makes more sense. And then we have it. Then we have stitches. And Substance Painter lets you adjust the path position. So that's how far away from the outsides of your UV tiles this is. So path position, if I make that smaller, the stitches go closer to the edges of the UVs. And if I go and make that larger, then it goes further away into the UVs. So I believe if you wanted them kind of closer to the outside here, you need to kind of change your UV tiles a little bit. But it's a really nice, handy way to just get started with a few stitches. There are other properties that you can choose here. I'm going to leave this on 0 so that they're as small as possible. That's the stitch size. 0.5 is the default. So if I'm going to make that smaller, the stitches become tinier or larger. And then there's the width as well. And this is currently just using just the gray material here. So you can also use something that will, like on the material here, if I just go and do something to my height value, I think a color would suffice. I can go and, oh no, that's not what I meant. Height value, where are you, height? I think alt clicking, you can isolate this height. There we go. Height, I can go make it kind of come out or ditch in. So if you wanted them to come out a little bit, you can increase that height. So quite nice. So they're too pronounced right now, but if you go and make him a little smaller and a little nimble, they will work quite well. So one thing is that maybe I don't want the stitches everywhere. So currently it'll just use the stitch on everyone on the UV map. And if I wanted to say, hey, they're okay here, but I don't want them here, then you can go and I believe in the mask here, you can add a paint layer in here, I believe. Add paint. And this allows you to go and paint, whoops, I think that was the wrong color. If you paint with black, I think this allows you to remove the stitches now. And then, use a different brush. Also use your Wacom tablet, and you essentially go and masking this out. And it's kind of nice to do that. It is easier to do it with the Wacom, actually. Let me just go and quickly do that. while we're here. And so that lets you make some fine adjustments. And this works, of course, for any mask. So you can go and you can also use different alphas. You can use this for decals. We haven't looked into that. You can go and make add projections to things, so you can stencil things out. And it's all those things I intend to find out more about. And of course, then, share with you. Like here, this, we may not need that. We'll go get rid of that. But it's kind of nice. So it's one thing that I kind of miss about Substance Painter is that we don't have things like that we used to from Photoshop, like what you were saying, Victoria, about stroke a path. I would love it if they had path tools here. They don't have that, do they, Chris?
Not that I know of, but I don't know that much about Substance, honestly.
Neither do I.
So
but it's also
I know the subset of stuff that I use a lot, and beyond that,
that's just
the story of life.
So much cool stuff. I mean, I think materials was always something that I thought was problematic, because to get them done well, I just wouldn't even know where to begin. Mm-hmm. So maybe I'm going to go and just take this away also on the I suppose collar, you'd call it.
It looks like you kind of cheat with edges, yeah.
There. It's kind of good. So you basically, it's kind of a weird way of thinking about it, that you add too much in and then you take the bits out that you don't want anymore, and then you're kind of there. So I suppose, yeah, that's kind of, I think on the stitcher, can you also go and blend this in and out?
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Well, if you have an idea where your paths are, I suppose you can model your geometry so your UV islands are set up.
Yes, absolutely.
Like that.
I would imagine you can even go and have one set of UV islands for the rest of your model, and then one just particularly for something like this. I mean, you could bake again, right? You could use the generator and put this down, rasterize this in a way, mm-hmm. and then bake again for a different purpose. So that is also possible. You can paint with white. Yes, you can. So that's another option. You can make a paint layer. So it's a different type of layer up here. And you can literally go and just paint all over it. You can apply face paint as well to characters.
We can use stitches as a brush, so you can just drag them across.
I think I did this with a pair of your shoes, Chris.
Right, I remember you doing that. And that's the way you did it, right? With the brush tool
yes,
and the stitches?
Because back then I didn't know there was a thing called the generator. Right. So there are some, that's not quite correct here how I'm doing it, but yeah, you can get a stitch brush in here. You can also, there are particle brushes. My God, I think Brian got me on into particle brushes. And they are really cool there, where you just go and make a paint stroke and then particles kind of come out in 3D space. It's very, very cool. And not just with stitches, you can also paint with proper materials like, carbon fiber. It's a very, very exciting material with height values and shininess values.
Yeah. And that's one of the things nice about Substance, like what's that, Tugs PSX, I can't pronounce that, sorry, says make a jean dress. So what you could do is just take that one color layer there where the red is, and just put a denim texture on top of that, in the way you have suddenly denim, jeans dress.
Yes. Yeah, so these channels here, when you go on the material, you got all these channels here. This is color, this is height, this is roughness. So I could now change, I think it comes with its own height map here, so you can see this.
Well, you can just switch that off, denim right in front of that, or duplicate that and turn it to a denim.
Right. Yes, that's a good idea. We can do that.
So when I'm working on a project, you usually see, like, I got a red layer, and then I got a blue layer, and then I got, a denim layer. And then you just turn those on and off, and then the stitches and the wear and everything on top of that just applies to those color layers as you need them, because the way it's all layered. Do
I just click denim, or is that going to ruin? Is how that's putting everything?
You can just drag it on; it's layered, and then you can just order it.
I just drag it on here. That's just denim, but then I want that only really to apply to the...
Yeah, and then just drag that down the stack.
Oh, that down. And then we have these
so
two heights basically now mix up, don't they? This height map.
There is. You can change the mix settings for those.
Can you?
Little drop down on the... And this I don't actually like about Substance. On the right side, there's... So up in the top left of the layers, you can see what channel you're working on.
Oh, this one here? Oh,
yes.
Oh,
so
that's how you do that.
If you go up to where it says layers, and then right underneath it says base color. And then if you look at the layer and over on the right side, it tells you the mixing method for that, for the base color. Right. So if you go back up to layers and you switch over, so you're seeing basically the height maps and the bump maps, or the height maps and the normal maps mixing using this L edge. What is that? It's linear dodge, I think, something like that.
Linear. Let me go back to height. Did it say that? Yeah, linear dodge. Right.
So if you didn't want those mixing, you would like switch one to normal, and then the stuff on it, and then it's just like a normal layer. It's not mixing with the stuff underneath.
Gotcha. So I could say like the normal map, don't mix that at all, and just bring that in from here.
This way, the normal map from that layer is the only one that gets used.
I see. I didn't know that, actually. That's very cool. So
yeah. So if you wanted to mix those effects, and they do that by default, and I'm not sure why, because it bothers me.
Right. That's how they separate this out, because this is what I was looking for the other day and thinking, well, why doesn't this behave like I'm used to it from Photoshop? But that's because that was only affecting the base. I never thought this, never thought to look at this.
Yeah. And unfortunately, you can't like do them all at once and set them all to normal. You have to like go into height, switch it to normal, go into normal or roughness, switch it to normal, or switch it to, whichever one you want. You have to do them one at a time to each layer.
This is this makes more sense now. It's one of those things that it's just like the endless learning curve, isn't it? So this is, I've selected my dress material here, the red material, and I'm selecting the roughness, and now I'm basically turning the roughness channel out.
You do have the opacities there, so you can just dial that.
Right.
So if your dirt layer is too dark or whatever, instead of playing with the properties panel, you can just dial it back using the opacity.
Like we're used to it from Photoshop, right? Because that's something I really enjoy that about Photoshop, that you go over the top and you think, hey, that's good. I just need to tone it down and mix it in, and then we're kind of there. Lovely. Hey, let me just quickly export this here. And then maybe, Chris, you can show us the new product by Riversoft Art about what that is trying to alleviate. So it's you've seen the export or the import process from Daz Studio into Substance and the export process a couple of times. I'll go and just export this out. It doesn't really take all that long once you've done it a few times. Substance stream, there we go, and this is the dress.
For those of you out there thinking, what does the Substance assistant do? We'll just show that real quick.
Yes, because I think it's really valuable. It only just came out a couple of weeks ago. I'll just call this maps in here.
Yeah, my personal experience as a Blender user is it's not that helpful for me.
Yes, it's often there. Sometimes products try to make things easy, and in so doing they introduce things that you really have to kind of know about, and that makes it more difficult than just learning the regular way of doing it. But at the same time, we all learn different ways. So do I have metallic here? I don't really, do I? So all I need then is my normal map, normal into here, and I might use the height as a bump as well. Switch that on, and then we need the roughness, which is under glossy here. Roughness, glossy roughness, and switch that on, and then we have that on the base. Let's copy that and paste it onto here, and then we have it on the sleeves with stitches. All right. So it's nice. You do it 20 times and it really grows on you. So it's, it does take practice like many of these things, but it will work, and it's kind of, the more you learn, the more individuality you bring to your own pictures. So it's kind of cool. Chris, let me go switch back over to your PC.
Okay. Let me.
Here we go.
Quick, hide the porn. All right, where are we? There I am. Okay, so let's get rid of this. We're just going to start over again.
Yes, start all over again.
So I'm just going to do the smart content thing because I think that's still up there. And just drop that in. And I've only done this a couple of times, so I'm probably going to bring up the PDF file to kind of go through that again. So there is, where's my, nope. Bring you up. So there it is. We'll just open that. I guess I could just type in.
I like it. I see it. Mm-hmm. I should have a look at this more often. Last time I looked at it, Daz Central was, well, not to my liking. It could well be that there have been updates since then. So
that's the general consensus. Most people don't seem to like it, but it works for me.
It's also, I think it depends when you join making things with Daz Studio. If you've been using it for 15 years, I think you're used to Install Manager, and you just want to use that and not have any of the newfangled stuff. And then
okay, so you know what? We're going to bend the arms this time.
Yes, let's do that. So the script comes with comprehensive documentation, both a PDF document that you can read that explains everything. There's also video by Escher on the sales page. And when you launch the script, it comes with very thorough explanations of what you're supposed to do and why. So, that's good to know.
Okay. Like that. Let's see. So that's one of the things. Let's launch the script. I got the manual open. So we're going to launch the assistant to send stuff out. I personally find this a little wonky, but we'll go through. So they want you to make sure that you check, that you kind of go through the checklist each time. I'm not sure, what are the options? Not much options there. So the idea is to pose the prop so you see everything. In this case, I'm going to move the arms so we don't get as bad darkening in the armpits like we did last time.
Those are reminders. They're not really settings that you have to. You have to tick them, but they don't really do anything. They're there to remind you of what you're supposed to do before the export process.
Yep. So they want you to reassign polygons for better texturing. That's kind of like setting stuff up for our ID maps, but they do it in a different method than I do. So we're going to do that. I'm just going to do that with the grouping tool real quick. And let me see, check the polygon groups and reassign polygons as needed. If you want to bake by mesh name. So we're assigning to groups. Is that what it says? I think. I always forget. Let's try this. Whoops. Let's bring up tool settings. I think, are we assigning by face groups? Are we signing by regions? I think we're signing by face groups.
Possibly. This step, I got to be honest, I didn't get. I don't understand what that means.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the shirt. I'm going to select that. Actually, I'm going to make sure. And this is one thing that drives. I need an easy way to clear my selections. I'm going to clear the selection. Select the shirt part. I'm going to make a face group for that.
I think I have Control D set up for that because I know that from Photoshop. Clear the selection.
Okay, and then what do I got? I got my shirt, so we're just going to assign those to the shirt. I think that's what I'm supposed to do. Then I think I'm going to deselect that. Select the button layers, the collar, and the sleeves. I'm going to make another face group called, I think I'm going to call this trim, if I'm doing this right.
Oh, I see.
And then I'm going to assign this to the trim group.
To the trim. So it, like if you had something that has like wood parts and metal parts, I think the idea is you want to keep all the metal parts together and all the wood parts together. That's what this is for, right?
That was it. And I guess if you had more groups or whatever you wanted to deal with, I'm being lazy, so I'm just going to go with the 2 for today. So I think that is what we have done. Yep, everything is now assigned to 2 groups.
Okay.
Over here, I think that's right. Back to my smart content. Try that again. Detach decorations if necessary. We don't have any decorations per se. It has the buttons, but those aren't going to come across, I don't think.
Right, I don't think so either. Yes, let's
we should be ready.
Not worry about it. Yeah, let's go check all.
Say check all. And what it's going to do is it's going to create a couple of a high res. Well, it's going to make a high res and a low res version. They're basically the same, but they add a suffix high and low to them.
Indeed.
So I'm going to stick you here in the test folder. And we're going to call you SA shirt to substance assistant.
Oh, good point.
Unless that has not already been converted. Okay. Triangulate. Yes. Okay. Let's see. Did that work? So I should have a high version and a low version. So that's what it's looking for there. I think, let's check the instructions again. I probably should have done this a couple more times.
I appreciate that you're doing it because I didn't really understand the back process at all. So it's nice that you can explain that at least in part.
Yeah. So how it works, select your item, execute the strip. No, it saved it out. And
2 OBJs.
Click accept. This will do the remainder of the steps and export to 2 OBJs for working within Substance Painter. Okay, so we should be able to pull in our 2 OBJs in Substance Painter now.
So what I find weird is that you don't have the shirt twice, you have the chest part twice. I don't know if that was supposed to be that way or if you had to actually select the blouse before running the script.
I think I had the blouse selected. And let's get out of that. And did I not hide the buttons? Maybe it got confused by where are those buttons? Are they still hidden down in?
I thought they were parented to the blouse.
Yeah, but I think, are those ghost buttons? Where are you guys? Oh, apparently it duped the buttons out.
Oh, they duped the buttons, okay.
Or at least it looks like it did.
Why do you have 2 objects calling chest upper, high, and low? I'm not sure if that's supposed to be that way. I have a feeling it's supposed to be the blouse high and blouse low.
Yeah.
Go delete it. Select select the top part of your original blouse and then run the script again. See if that does any.
Okay, I lost my blouse. Here. Has magic working? There it is. Oh, Daz did not like that.
Sometimes it's what happens, isn't it?
Yep.
Crash on the hour. Sorry, Chris, it's 6 o'clock. That was all the time we had. There's no.
Yeah, that's what Daz is telling me, isn't it?
Yes. It's way out of time.
Yeah, let me just take a quick look at what got exported.
Yes, Victoria, it's a generator. Absolutely, it's a generator that you add to a mask, and then you can use it. It's called I think it's just called the auto stitch generator. I might make a dedicated video on that on my channel, just like a 5-minute one, just so that we're all on the same page.
So there is SA shirt low. There is SA shirt high. I don't know. Let's see what we got.
Come on. Maybe the shirt's working fine. Maybe I'm just,
yeah,
I'm seeing things.
There was a bit more. I'm thinking the shirt low may still have materials, and those might need to have been collapsed.
Right, good point. Yes, you didn't do that step.
That's right. Did that work? Yes, it did. It did. That was a step I missed.
Cool. Yeah, so that's the thing. It's not quite. I think this is something that I'm kind of missing about that script. It's not a one-click solution. It's using the script is almost as complicated or even more so than just doing it manually, than just hitting file export twice. So the script kind of, you have to click it, but then you end up clicking actually more things than you do by just doing the manual process. But then there might also be other steps that I don't know that are important. So it could well be that it is helpful to some. So.
Okay, let's see if we can get this. I think this time I'm going to remember to take the buttons off.
Okay.
I think we'll do that. So let's take that filter off. Reload the shirt. Oops. Yes, I see it.
Victoria's going to be stitching everything from now on. Yes, let's experiment with this. I mean, especially with what UV maps create the best offset. It's just such a magic feature, isn't it? So let's see what we can come up with there.
There's my buttons. Let's just get rid of those.
Yes, let's go get rid of the buttons. Complexity eliminated.
Okay, and I think there was the grouping, and I'm hoping I did it right, because they don't actually say, did my PDF go away?
It crashed as well. Start with stockings, Yoshi says. It's very funny.
Reassign polygons for better texture baking, right? Check the polygon groups and reassign polygons as needed. This can be done, there are exacting terms on what these things should be referred to, versus face groups versus surface groups versus the other groups.
It's true, yes.
And you probably should, if you're writing documentations, use the term that Daz uses. That's just me. I'm just being snooty. So I'm going to assume they were talking face groups, because that tends to be the way. And I think I noticed when I was working on it before, that seems to be what they were messing with.
Right, yes.
Slowly coming back to me. So, we're going to select the shirt. I'm going to make a new base group for shirt. And this is a destructive process. It did say that.
Yes, it did. So once you come to apply your exported textures, you're advised to remove everything from your scene and load in a fresh object that you want to texture. So the ones that are left over in your Daz scene, they will be permanently ruined, I believe.
Yes, because as you can see now, I've now messed up the groups in here. And then we're going to clear. And then add these. You come to here and assign.
Gotcha.
That. Did that work? That did work. Okay. So if I should hide that. Hide that. So I think we are good there.
Then so just to make absolutely sure, make sure the blouse is selected as a top level item in your scene tab, which it is. So that's all good.
Okay. Also, I'm going to just delete out the rest of this.
Yeah, the empty ones. Yeah, get rid of those. Good point. Perfect.
So I think they may have done that in the video I was watching. Excuse me.
Now it's time to run the script. once.
Right now, I'm trying to run the script. So.
I like that little drawn arrow. They're very nice.
It's just weirdly faster for me to do it that way.
Interesting.
I suppose I could go to Smart Content and search for it. But,
that's what I would do.
That's what normal people do.
Well, we all have different ways of working, so I think it's kind of nice to see you working this way. It's.
Oh, let's pose. And let's, dang it. I'm in genres. I'm going to clear that. Just going to pose the. Well, now I've got no groups. I can't pose it. Pose first, then regroup. All right. Anyhow, we're going to go with this.
Let's go with that. Come on, can we do it in 10 minutes?
All right, check all.
Check it all.
This time we've detached it. We'll accept that. I'm just going to overwrite that.
Actually, aren't you supposed to just call it shirt? And it goes and does high and low?
It does. So let's make this another name.
SA2. SAA. I like it. SAA.
This way I don't have to worry about it not working because it found a pre-existing object. You must select that is not already.
Oh, yes, because it just basically creates a new object and then it switches to that, and that's what brings up that message. Okay.
All right, so I got my. So if I remember correctly, this one I have to collapse the materials down.
It's the low one, yes. The high one is as
the high one is exported out already with the materials. The low one was exported out with the materials, so we have to fix that.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, so back into the geometry editor. Back into the, and unfortunately I can't see chat right now.
Oh, that's cool. I'll keep an eye on it.
Okay, and what are we doing? Tool settings.
Tool settings, collapse the surface groups.
Yeah, so I'm going to just rename you shirt. Rename that shirt surface. Select the others and assign them to that.
Leaving 3 empty ones. Get rid of those. And now we have this.
This
needs to be exported again. So just that, and the only mention he makes is, so this is now the low version. SAA shirt low, indeed.
Right. Let's do that. Target exists.
That's cool.
Yep.
We want to do that.
So they like to use the Daz defaults.
Exactly. With your thing as well, the filter objects, I would probably do that just in case.
I am because I still have the other shirt visible.
And then the only other thing needs to be disabled was right normals.
Right normals. Got it. Okay.
And that should be that.
Okay, so that should be that. Yes. And we hide those. So what am I? Oh, that's the other box.
That's the original. Yeah, so we have the original a high version that we're going to use as an ID baker, and the low version, which is going to be the one that is now triangulated, and that's the one that we're going to use as the base object in Substance Painter.
Right. So I'm bringing in the low one. I'm just going to make sure that's set for the right normal set. Say okay. Yep. Discard. I think we weren't using that.
Perfect.
Let's switch back to the 2 so you can see the UV map and the object. And then we do our baking and we use the high version.
We use the high version. SAA shirt high. And then this little tick box, I use low poly to bake high poly. Make sure that is unticked like Chris does. So very important.
Yep. And they are using a Mesh ID poly group, I think.
I think material color, wasn't it? I think that kind of worked. Could well. I might be wrong.
Yeah, let's see
what we get. This. See what happens. I can always rebake it if there's an issue. So.
Yep. So did we get our ID map? That's the real thing.
Yes.
Yes, we did.
Ha ha ha.
Okay, so that works.
Okay, that works.
So I'm going to just really quick and dirty. Dang it. There we go. And of course I can't select anything. Just drop that on there.
Yeah, as long as they're different, we're good.
There and there. there. Right, there we go.
Perfect. Beautiful.
Isn't that the most gorgeous thing you've ever seen?
NFT it.
And I'm just going to export this out. It's just the default for right now. Does its thing. Open output directory. Do I still have my other ones in here?
You know, you may have done, yeah.
I have, yeah. You know,
delete, do again.
I
Good idea.
confuse myself so easily.
Don't we all?
And the export goes so fast.
Easy for given value of easy. So the other step that the script makes possible is to now kind of bring the maps back.
Right.
So that's the plan.
So that's the one script, getting it out. Now we want to bring the textures in. So I'm going to come into here. I'm just going to drop these into the dasher, and we're going to make a subfolder for that. Actually, we will do this.
SAA shirt, of course.
Exactly. You are on to me.
Nate says we should NFT all the mistakes because of the randomness. It's a good point. Give it to the blockchain.
There we go. Okay, so the other script is the one that brings the textures in to our shirt. One of these days, I'll actually type something into that content window at the top.
When you're ready, you know, when you're ready.
In the meantime. All right, let's see. Yes, we got our shirts, our blouse selected, right? And, you know, here we go. Look at that. I'm actually using, I got to go back. Products. All products.
Yeah, you can just double click that and then.
Substance.
Oh, that's how you're doing. Yeah, of course, yeah.
That's how you use smart content.
How you use smart content.
I've always wondered about that.
I'm glad you're waking up to it, because it's one of those things. Smart content. I've seen many people who never got into it because, like, whatever works for you. If you're right. Somebody who's been using Poser for many years and you just used to navigating the directory structure.
Exactly. Cool. It's that sort of thing. All right, there's our materials.
Materials, gotcha.
There are these things here.
So this step, I gotta be brutally honest, I don't quite exactly understand. Talk us through this.
It went a little amiss the first time until I realized we needed to kind of redo these acronyms.
Ah, acronyms. So
oh, sorry about that. That indigestion sometimes just kicks in and it demands all your attention. So I'm going to open up the directory.
That's where Substance saved out the textures, of course.
Yep. If Chris can remember where it's on my D drive. When you're on a stream, half your brain stops.
Well, for whatever reason, it happens. It's only operating at 50% capacity. Exactly. I don't know why.
There's textures, vanity, product. So there's our directory.
Got it.
So if I do this rescan, it didn't find anything.
Nothing happens. This is what happened to me. I was thinking...
Okay, so we have to do the options. So what I need here, I think, is...
Oh, of course, a name.
And you know what? I didn't save the file, so they have these weird file names. There they are.
Yes.
So I think...
So you have to have the whole... So SAA shirt isn't going to be enough. You have to have the whole thing.
Exactly. So I think I need that.
And then there's the underscore, and it got you.
And
okay.
I might have to change some of these. So if we rescan that.
It's got it.
So it's got it, but it hasn't assigned them.
Ah, what a shame. Victoria's got to jump off. Okay, thanks for being here, Victoria. I really appreciate that. Have fun with Substance Painter, and I hope you can do a ton of stitching with this. Have fun.
Also, I just realized the template saved the UDIM number on the end. So you know what? We're just going to resave that and rescan this. Okay. Substance. Here to my output templates. Let's do. I'm going to grab one of my templates. 5-channel close.
Is that the one without emissive, I would imagine?
Yes. So that does have the metallicity, which we really probably aren't going to need either.
Just for completeness, it's good, yeah. But emissive, I totally agree. Let's ditch that.
And so it's designed to save with just the name and then the channel type. Open up that again. Cut those. Back over to the shirt. Just delete all of that out. Paste. So we need to tell it this name here. What is the alpha blend metallic? Where did that come from? That's new.
You probably don't need it. You might as well just delete it. It's probably okay. Oh no, you mean the whole name? Yes. What is that?
Why is my whole name? Oh, it's because I never saved the file. That's just the default name. It gives it.
Gotcha. Right. Yes.
So basically, whatever this stuff is in front of your channel is what we need to put into the options, right into here.
And then it has underscore channel acronym already in there. So that's the thing that's being appended. But the first bit, you got to tell it.
But we may have to change some of those. So let's do that. Let's rescan. So it's picked those up, but it hasn't assigned anything because this says base color. And this is looking for BC.
Oh, okay.
So back over to the options. Let's see, there is that. Can I just, and there we go. And this, call that base color.
I just replace it.
Yep, and assign that.
Okay.
And let me see, I think I'm calling the height. I think that's height. Accept that. And you can see the checks are the ones that we're using. My roughness says roughness, so I don't know why that didn't pick up. My metallicity says metallic, and my normal map says normal.
So in other words, you would have manually assigned those materials like 50 times already, right? If you had done nothing else.
I would be done already.
I hate to say it, but I don't see how this is. I see the point, but I don't think it's giving me all that big an advantage over speed here. Now that's working, except for the height.
Yeah, so I misspelled height probably.
Yes, probably spelled.
That would be me.
EI rather than IE.
But once you have these set, you're good with the acronyms. It remembers.
It remembers that. Okay, that's good to know. It
annoyingly remembers. I uninstalled it and reinstalled it, and it still remembered.
Okay.
So just in case you're going, what were the defaults? They're gone. They're just gone. Even when I did so anyhow, so we got to go back to options. We'll fix height.
Height.
Because Chris can't spell.
It's Stream Brain. It's okay.
Yeah, that's it. Stream Brain.
Height. The medical condition. I like it.
So now if we rescan.
Sorts for two likes the Chris Cox method. Yeah, me too.
Okay, there we go.
There we go. Got it all. Perfect.
And I've got my Zoom window. Accept that.
So you accept, and now every material zone that we had, we don't need to copy and paste things. The material zones, because it's the original object, is still intact, and it's plugged in all the maps into all the channels.
Yep. So there you go. That's how that works.
That's how that works. So it's also you can also, of course, now start doing a bit of fine tuning. So if you needed a little bit more or less glossiness, or more or less bumpiness or whatever, you can do that on the shader. But I suppose I can see the value if you have like 100 props. They're all tiny, and you want to all export them out. Once you've set this up, you go and say, well, now it's just a matter of doing this 100 times without having to do more copy and paste work. I think on individual objects every once in a while is probably not that awesome, but if you do a lot of quantity, it might actually be very helpful.
Right. So if I just rechange these, I would just, delete those, drop the other ones in, rerun this script, and it should reassign them all.
Okay. Nice one.
So if we decided to just change this map over here, export them back out,
Right.
replace these,
Just go,
and then just accept. It should just, when we rescan it, just take the updated maps. Hopefully, I don't know. Let's find out.
let's find out, change something, bake them out. I'm going to have a quick look at questions here, see if I can answer some while you're doing that. Like Sci-Fi Babe was asking earlier, for Daz characters, would you still color the various parts like face, torso, legs, and arms for use in Substance Painter, or keep them as separate maps? Very good point. I think so. There is PAs have a script that randomizes the color values for the various surfaces. So if you had something with 3 or 4 material zones, it's easy enough to just go and color them in manually. But if you had something like a figure that has many more, like 20 or so material zones, that might be a little bit of a cumbersome process. So I'll find out if that script is openly available that assigns random colors. So that would be a little bit more helpful. But yes, I would probably go and save the character out twice, just like we've shown it for clothing here. So if you wanted to have something that adds kind of a paint over seams, then yes, I would still do one object with material zones and one without. Use the one without to import, use the one with to bake the ID maps. The one with would have random colors so that you can do your ID map. That's how I do it. I think actually Travis Davids has a video on his channel that shows you the process if you wanted to follow that. Brian, maybe you can find it. It has a thumbnail of a guy who has a lot of face paint on Travis's channel. That's a really good video. And he explains the same process that I'm actually remembering this now, that I now understand why this is actually necessary, having it twice, once with surfaces and once without.
Okay, so it actually worked, but it didn't refresh on the viewport. So you can see the new color here.
Oh, Control I will do that. Control I should do that.
Is that what does it?
Not on stream. I like it. Yes, that rereads if you go to the top hamburger icon in the surfaces editor, that
refresh.
Exactly. If you click that, there's a refresh option.
That tends not to work as much as I would like it to.
Dang.
You see? Let's try this. Refresh images. Do you hear that? That is Daz laughing at us. but you can see when I switch over to iRay, it's there.
Yes. Bizarre, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
A couple of questions from
Daz is falling for that refresh trick.
A couple of questions from Sean 3DA. Can we discuss organizing assets in the Substance Painter as well? I don't know. Can we, Chris? I don't have much experience in that at all.
I'm not sure what you mean by organizing assets in Substance. You mean in here?
The easiest way to find these things is to just search for them. So there's these tags that you can use: base materials, smart materials.
Yeah.
And there's also these little icons that you can filter things down with.
Right. And all my stuff, like I said, I have a tendency of using that. So I know if I've been making materials, I generally try to, you can do it that way. You can choose the base materials. You can sort through them. What is that? Smart materials, materials. But it's all, there's not a real folder structure for organizing that I've noticed.
I haven't either. I know that you give Substance Painter a folder for your local asset library, and I think your actual Substance project can also save additional assets that only are saved with the project. But if you dump something into a central location, like an M2 drive or an SSD drive, then if you go and head over to the settings and import a new material, then it'll go and end up in that folder. So you don't have to worry about pasting something into a specific folder if you don't want to. So Substance Painter will just go and paste that there anyway. And that might not mean you might still want to keep a copy of it if you want to have something that you can't re-download from the Adobe website. But you don't have to file it into something that it prefers, or there's no folder structure like we have it in Daz Studio. I don't think that exists.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it has folders here and it kind of breaks things down, but as you can see over here, it's all more or less just in one big group that you filter out.
Yeah, so it's like Chris was doing. If you make your own materials, it's a really good idea to use a prefix that you can remember, and then you just search for that, and that'll just filter out all the C. Cox materials, or all the Sean 3DA materials, for example. Another question was, does it matter if you tile under UV transformations versus parameters? I'm not sure if you mean here in Substance Painter or in Daz Studio.
He means substance, but I'm not sure where he's referring to. I mean, the properties here, which most people have down here.
Oh, that's what you mean. Gotcha, yes. Oh, you're she. Okay, no worries. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know.
So
I think so. It's a little bit of a difficult one. This long list, like if we stick with properties there, it has these two icons at the top there, a little square thing and a little round thing. I'm not good with icons. They're on the literally top left there, Chris.
Yeah. So what is...
And those two things basically just get you to a different position in the same list. So it's the same list. You can either go and click that icon, or you can scroll up. So it basically is kind of the same. And I think the UV transformation are only available in one spot, namely there.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it elsewhere. Unless there's... Sometimes you can access stuff to a different... Can you just get through here?
It's confusing because the whole list is called properties, but the whole properties list has a parameter section versus a UV transformation section. So I find it a tad messy, the layout, gotta say, but that's just me. So perhaps that's where confusion comes in. And one last question, is there a way to save your preferred settings to use across multiple models? You mean export settings?
You can save smart materials. So if you have a group of these done, you can just click on that and you can group them.
Yeah.
And then name that shirt or something. And then I can just make a smart material out of that, and we can drop that out later. That's the way I usually save these settings here. Where is that? It's create smart material, right? So you do that.
And good
then
point.
In your assets. I can't even spell my own name.
That is difficult.
There it is.
Ugly shirt.
So
there you go.
So there it is there, and then you can just like drag and drop it onto whatever.
Like another clothing item.
About?
Brian, good point. There aren't always tiling options under parameters. It really depends on the creator who's made that base material or the smart material to expose those. Yeah, good point. Yeah, smart materials. That's another interesting difference between smart materials and base materials. So the base ones, they are literally, think of them as a tiled shader that can be applied to a surface. But a smart material would have things like generators and automatic noise and other things stacked up that can be used as one thing that can be dragged onto a portion of your object. But it might be more complex than a base material. So that's something also that I had a few difficulties with understanding the differences between those. So smart materials are very powerful, but they may contain more than one base material as well as other things kind of stacked up to create really cool effects, but they might not always behave the way you think they should. So it's also difficult then to see, if you wanted to change the tiling on a smart material, you really have to examine the material and see if that parameter is exposed, if you can actually change it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what Lara says.
Yeah, what Lara says. Welcome, Lara. Yes. Good to see you, by the way.
4 or 5 programs. Exactly. Blender will do it all, but Clo makes clothes better.
Good point.
Substance, textures better. I find Daz just easier to set up scenes and render with. But I find Blender really easy to model with. So.
And we are always learning something. Absolutely, Sage.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, thank you so much for watching, everyone. I think, we've been 2.5 hours. I think we're going to have to stop. Thank you so much for being here, Chris, and for sharing your knowledge with us. It's really nice to that you took your time and talked us through this. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jake.
You're very welcome. Join us again on the Daz public channel about in 2 weeks. I think my guest is going to be Corm Jackson, and we're going to talk about something cool. It could either be custom characters or lighting. So join me for that in about 2 weeks on a Saturday at 4 p.m. Chris is going to stream tonight, actually, on his own Twitch channel. If you want to give him a follow there, he's going to do a Saturday night social. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's Saturday night social. A bunch of us just kind of, a few of us hang out in a voice chat. Excuse me. That indigestion again.
Terrible.
We like to share our projects and stuff we've been working on. It doesn't even have to actually be art. If you do other stuff, we occasionally have had musicians pop in and share work. But we kind of just share stuff, kind of chat about stuff. I typically will have a Betty Boop cartoon, so there is that to look forward to.
It's kind of community hang time, isn't it? With you, it's nice to meet new people. Sometimes artists, sometimes just like other creatives, and it's just nice to hang out and just shoot the breeze and see what other people are doing, and just have a little bit of a critique session of, hey, this is exciting. How did you do that? Learn something new, or hey, have you thought about doing this differently? So it's kind of cool. 8 p.m. tonight, Eastern Standard Time.
Yes.
I'm going to be on my own channel tomorrow morning, and I'm going to do a little thumbnail with Daz Studio as well as Blender and my 3D Shenanigans program. Join me for that if you like. Other than that, have a wonderful rest of the Saturday, and we'll see you very soon. Take care, my friends.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody, for being here.